Good evening, everyone. We are waiting for the other panelists to join. As soon as they join, we'll start the session. Probably in the next 5 minutes, we'll be starting the session.
अंकल अंकल को आप लगाओगे बोलो ज्वाइन करने का गुड इवनिंग सर
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How are you?
Starting in a while, sir. Yeah, in 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, would someone be able to confirm if I am audible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, we are audible.
Okay, thank you.
Permission to start, sir?
Yeah.
In the digital realm, customers share sensitive data, make transactions, and interact online. Establishing trust assures them of security, privacy, and reliability, ultimately leading to increased loyalty and positive word of mouth. Additionally, trust is the foundation for successful collaborations, partnerships, and overall sustainable growth in the digital landscape. In today's dynamic digital landscape, trust is the cornerstone of successful business operations. The panel focuses on the pivotal role of digital trust and offering insights on understanding the essence of digital trust, leveraging trust for sustainable business growth, ensuring cybersecurity and data privacy, building customer trust in the virtual realm, decision making for trustworthy technologies. Before we delve deeper into today's discussion, it is my privilege to express our sincere gratitude to our visionary leader, whose leadership and dedication have been a driving force behind the success of this event. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our esteemed director, Professor M.K. Tiwari, IIM Mumbai. I now request Director Professor Manoj K. Tiwari to share a few opening remarks for this stimulating journey into the realm of digital trust. Please join me in welcoming Professor M. K. Tiwari, Director, IIM Mumbai.
Thank you very much for initiating this particular plan to have a workshop on digital trust for business success in the technological era. I am grateful to some of the keynote speakers here. Particularly, I wish to acknowledge the deeper contribution and support that we received from Mr. Akshay Tuteja, who is the Global Head Cybersecurity Consulting KPMG. And I'm also grateful to Ritu Mittal, Vijay Senji, and Simoy Ghosh, and Sankal Pandey. And of course, there is a very viable team here at IIM Mumbai. They are also working for driving many of the key concepts and themes that how to promote digital trust in the business operations. And I would like to say that some of the recent features which are glaringly talked in the corporate circles, particularly that how the decoupling our identities from our data and access to safeguard our secrets in the cloud. So most of us we are using different kind of cloud services, but the time has come up to de-identify ourselves from such kind of thing. Only data is there. So like this, there are many of the newer suggestions and things are coming up. How to improve the digital trust among the different kind of partners who are playing role in these entities. So with this particular note, why once again I say that long back ago, not only digital trust, it was something other trust. So there was a meeting where many of the alumni were there, and the discussion was there how to ensure that at that time NITI Mumbai should be included into the National Institute of Importance. So at that time, no one was thinking that it can be IIM or it can be NITI or something else like that. And at least he at that time brought some statistics about that, how the different ranking parameters, etc., were falling apart. So I took clue from him at that time and then saw that, okay, how can we do better with respect to improving our performance? And based on my own, ranking exercise, then we worked and we found everything has improved except one component, that is the perception. So I'm taking again things from what Akhilesh mentioned. Sir, we assure you that this time we are working over hard actually to see that perception also should go up, because many of the bottlenecks which are there in the form of perception, that will be taken care. So we just want to maintain your trust also among us, so that we can be more glued to the digital trust that you are championing at present. And here in the gathering, I saw one of our distinguished alumni, Ganesh Natarajan, is also attending the session. So thank you very much, sir. I don't know whether you have been given a panelist thing, but anyway, sir, your presence itself is always, boosting our morale for conducting this kind of sessions. So once again, thanking all of you for coming and taking the step. Now over to the coordinator to take up the things. Thank you, Akhilesh ji, for coming, and hope that physically you will be very soon in Bombay, sir, for us, sir. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. We are grateful for your continued direction and we look forward to further achievements under your guidance. Now, participants are requested to share their questions in the chat box. We will be taking up the questions in the end. So without further ado, let's start the session. The structure of the program is as follows. We'll be inviting our guest speakers. They will be sharing their wisdom on the given topic. Participants may write their questions in the chat box, and participants' questions will be taken towards the end of the program by the esteemed guest, as I mentioned before. Now, I welcome our panelist, Mr. Akhilesh Tuteja ji, Global Head Cybersecurity Consulting, KPMG. Let me take the pleasure to introduce Mr. Akhil Tuteja to all of you, partner and national leader at KPMG in India and Global Head of Security, with a focus on technology, media, and telecommunications. Renowned for advising over 200 plus clients on cybersecurity, IT strategy, and technology selection, emphasizing the business benefits of technology. So, please share your thoughts on the given topic.
Thank you so much. At the outset, I'm deeply delighted to be here, truly honored to be in front of this August audience. But before I get started with my views, I do want to congratulate IIM Mumbai for having unveiled its new logo. I can't tell you how inspiring this new logo has been. And I'm sure, like many other things, Professor Tiwari, under your leadership, this also resembles the true value system of IIM Mumbai and its stakeholders. It's intriguing that today we are talking about a topic of trust. And when I look at this logo, it actually resembles like a human pyramid. And those of you who understand that pyramids actually have the deepest and the strongest foundation. So I definitely see that this institution is built on the deepest and strongest foundation of trust. And a topic like digital trust, which is possibly first of its series, which the institute is talking about, it gives me immense pleasure to be part of this discussion. So thank you so much for inviting me here. And once again, a big thank you to you, Professor Tiwari, for doing what you're doing to take the institution to newer heights. I sometimes feel that I wish I was born 25 years later and I would be in the institute now when I think it's at the peak of its glory. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I have been asked to talk about a rather difficult subject on an audience which is so diverse and vast about the importance of digital trust. And before I go any further, I want to start with a question. And the question is that, why do you think that robbers wear face mask when they go to do a bank robbery or a robbery or a heist at a jewelry shop? Why don't they go without mask? And I'm sure you all know that the answer to this question is even a 3-year-old can tell you that they don't want to get recognized. Because if they went barefaced, if they didn't have mask, somebody will recognize and somebody will put them behind bars. Did you also wonder that why do people, when they drive cars on roads, are very careful, but when the same person is driving car on a video game, they drive it rash? They don't mind banging into the person coming behind or coming side. I'm sure the way they drive cars on video game, they don't drive the same car on road as they would do. And I'm sure the answer is simple that, maybe on video game, they're not dealing with real life, but actually the answer is very different. In video game, they also are wearing a mask. Nobody knows who's driving the car, even when you are an opponent or something. Why am I talking about, face mask and driving video game cars, etc., etc.? I think there's a very interesting connotation I want to drive. So let me tell you an experiment which gets conducted in many different countries in different contexts. It's called the trust game. And let me tell you a little bit about the trust game. So the way the trust game works is that 5 strangers are brought in a room and they say, hey, today you're lucky and you won a lottery of $100 each. You're simply lucky because you got randomly selected. Now you got 2 choices to make. One is that you can feel lucky, take this $100, go home and never return. Or you could actually put this $100 in this pot, which is right at the corner of the room, and go home and come back tomorrow, and this trust pot will multiply your money 5 times. Now imagine if you were in that room with 5 strangers saying, hey, I got this $100 out of doing nothing. What's the big deal? Let me put it there. Maybe these guys are right. If they're willing to give me $100, they might give me $500 as well. So as this game gets played in many countries, most people actually end up putting the money in the pot. And at the end of the day, money in the pot is $500. And guess what? Next day, they all come at the same spot and the money is multiplied by 5 times. And now they're $2,500 and they can all split $500 each. As they're happy going away with their $500, again, an instruction is given. You got a choice to go home with $500 or actually leave your $100 back into the pot, take $400 home, and come back next year. The $100 will become $500 again. And as you can imagine, this game will continue till you keep putting $100 in it and come back and take $500. But we all know life is not as simple. Everybody knows that nobody is watching when you're putting money in the pot or not. So one fine day in this game, one person, nobody knows who that person is, actually decides saying, nobody is watching whether I put money or not. So today, let me not put it. And 1 out of 5 person, one day, that random day could be day 3, day 5, day 8, decides, but it does happen. And that person doesn't put money in the pot. Next day, everybody comes up. They're all expecting $2,500 in the pot. But unfortunately, that day, there are $2,000 in the pot because not everybody put in their money. Now, the person who didn't put in money, of course, goes home happy because she carried $500 yesterday and today also is going to get $400. But imagine what happens to the others. Now, if you are one of those who actually put in the money and realize that somebody else didn't put money, what would you do? And invariably, next day, nobody puts money. And that is called the equilibrium state of a trust game. So a trust game starts with 100% trust. People trust the bot. But the moment there is one person who decides to defect the system, everybody else defects. So the concept of a trust game is that you will continue to be trusted till you make no mistakes. But the day you make one mistake, the trust is over. And after this trust is over, the moderator comes and says, okay, somebody made a mistake, but now we will make sure that the money gets multiplied by 5. Nobody changes. So the point I'm trying to make is that in our world, especially in business, trust is a one-way street. People will trust you, but once you break that trust, nobody will trust you. So trust is an irreversible game. And when it comes to digital trust, life is very difficult. When it coming to trusting you and me, let's imagine I was your friend and I meet you around the street. You will trust me because you've seen me every single day. But imagine I was one of those avatars behind a computer screen, or I was just simply an e-commerce website. If you were to ask me, saying, do you know who runs Amazon? I'm sure you'll say Jeff Bezos, but who's seen Jeff Bezos? We trust Amazon and not necessarily Jeff Bezos. In fact, you even trust the reviews on the Amazon, which are written by random strangers, and you trust them. The reason you trust them because Amazon has created that ecosystem. When you order an Uber and you say the person who's going to take you home is a 4.7 star rated person, you trust that person, even though you've never met that person. So digital trust is a concept in which the ecosystem can create and instill trust in a manner that everybody can trust. But the problem is that once that trust is broken, so imagine even once when you sent your lovely daughter on an Uber unattended and she was mishandled, I'm sure you're not going to trust Uber again. You won't give Uber the second chance. And that is the concept of digital trust, where it is very important. And like the game of video game, nobody is watching, nobody knows who Jeff Bezos is behind Amazon.com, but we trust Amazon.com. But the day Amazon.com will cheat you, trust me, you won't come back. And that is why it is so important in today's world to make sure that we create enough sense of digital trust, because the businesses are faceless. The businesses are no longer being represented by the street shop which you could go and shake hands with. The business are no longer being managed by the person who your uncle told you to trust all the time. And therefore, it is very important for these businesses to create an ecosystem which can instill the trust not by humans, but by systems, and allow all of us to do transactions better. So that's my initial thoughts I would like to share with the group, and happy to see the conversation going forward.
Very good.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful talk on digital trust, especially with your robots with a face mask and lottery and a lot of money. Why people? This was very insightful session, and your expertise has added an immense value to the event. Now, I would request second panelist who is with us, Mr. Sujay Sen, Executive Vice President and Global Head Interactive at LTI Mindtree. With 25 years plus years of diverse experience, Mr. Sujay's expertise spans infrastructure, marketing strategy, sales management, procurement, and audit. So the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, my congratulations as well, Professor Tiwari, and also to Professor Purnima ma'am. Being part of L&T, we've been associated for a long time. You guys are almost across the street. So, we've been working for almost a couple of decades now as NITI, and so glad to see the progress and the growth. So congratulations again. We also met few weeks back for the ESG lab, so good to meet you again. I think Akhilesh, it's very difficult to go after you. I think you summed up the topic very beautifully. What I really want to kind of establish, and for L&T, for my parent group, trust is very important. I think we build a lot of mission critical systems, and one small black mark, the mark that Akhilesh spoke about, I think that's going to be a very reputational damage to the company. So the trust kind of comes from the parent group. We are LTI Mindtree, we are the IT arm, and I manage the the interactive business, which is the experience business. So I want to talk a little bit about that. We speak to a lot of CMOs, and a lot of the work is about designing experiences. And you may ask, what has that got to do with trust? So let me just quickly tell you, why trust is so critical for us when we design these experiences for 300 plus customers all around the world. Uh, and it really again boils down to what Akhilesh mentioned, right? The experience design is to drive a certain outcome. So if you're on a website, everybody wants you to get to that outcome. It's either buying something or looking at some content, but there's an outcome that you want to drive to. And everybody out there is just one click away. And if they see something that they find not trustworthy, they're just going to jump. And like Akhilesh said, there are high chances that they'll never come back. So that is why when you design experiences, digital experiences, very important to keep the trust in mind. Because if you and I'll tell you by 5 6 themes why it is important. And almost all of you would have experienced some of these in some fashion or the other. For example, let me take the first theme. So these click tricks, right? A lot of people design their sites thinking of click tricks. And how many times you would have thought, okay, we would navigate it this way, but we found ourselves being almost cheated when we kind of navigated in a certain way. I think that's something that goes along with not establish trust. So that's one. Second, is control. Lot of times these days the control is taken away from the user, and that also breaks the experience. I think, for example, if there is a you go to a site and it says, it suddenly in the morning you go up there and the version is completely upgraded, and there is no way for you to go back and find out how your old site looked like, right? Versus the good ones kind of give you experience and keep that is expensive, but trust comes at a price. So you got to remember that, right? The control has to be given to the user. um, the next one is really consent. I think uh, when you are delivering a digital journey, it's very important to make sure that you have the right consent. And cookies, you have seen how cookies have evolved, right? And in fact, we are evolving to a cookie-less world. At least the third-party, cookies are going to vanish. But you have seen how people have now started asking consent in a more elaborate way. Uh, and I think one of the reasons why people are shifting to apps versus website, apart from convenience, is I think because there is a lot of consent that you can set up in apps versus websites. Um, so I think consent is also very important. Uh, I think digital social proof. How many times have you gone to a digital property and seen social proof of that property? Really at the point of decision making. I think people who are bold enough give that, right? And that builds trust. And be honest about it. I think, if you do that, good and bad, people appreciate more versus just reading good stuff, good stuff, good stuff, right? That almost feels fake unless you're really good at your game. So I think that's another piece. And another point that's coming up, and I know maybe I'm kind of against the tide on this one, is not building addictive digital properties. I think it's a little counterintuitive, but would you want your kids to go to some digital properties, or would you trust those digital properties that build addiction? There are a lot out there and there are good ones, but I just feel it's our moral trust responsibility to think of that. Think of that future where digital properties are not addictive. So these are some of that, and no conversation is complete without generative AI, because in the space that we work in, the content piece, that space is going to get disrupted in the next few years. All marketeers, their job is going to completely change. So we just ran a survey, and that's up there on ltimindtree.com. Anybody can go and take a look at it. We are, very interestingly, there are people who are in the journey of generative AI and some people who are exploring. So we looked at early adopters and we look at pre-adopters. The pre-adopters wanted, are looking for efficiency, process efficiency. But interestingly, people who have started adopting are looking at experience. Now, the reason why I bring this in is the next question we asked is, what is your barrier today? And very, very interestingly, the use cases are not coming up as barriers. I think people have thousands of ideas. What is coming as a barrier is data. And the underlying piece about that is trust. I think if you look at generative AI, there is the input side and there's the output side, right? The input side is how it collects and learns and all of that. I think there is a trust deficit there. At the same time, the output that is created, that's also, people don't trust that there is copyright issue, etc. But trust is also at fundamental level. So my point is, trust, I think, is very, very critical, as we deliver these digital experiences. Privacy is shaping a lot of that. Also, the newer privacy laws. But my summary is, as we develop and deliver these experiences, we've got to make sure that we don't break that trust and get that which never gets mended. So that's really what I wanted to just put out there. The learnings that I've had from my clients, and would love to further see if there are any questions on this.
Thank you, sir. We are grateful for your commitment to fostering a deeper understanding of digital trust. Now, I would invite our third speaker, Ms. Shimoy Ghosh, Chief Digital Transformation Officer at L'Oreal, brings over 15 years of expertise, specializing in transformative digital programs within the FMCG industry, recognized with industry accolades including Rising Woman CIO of the Year 2021. Ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Nidhi. And thank you to Akhilesh and Sujay for such a great introductions to our topic. And maybe I can take this moment to give a little bit of a background of the FMCG industry where I work. And then, I will talk about how trust plays in terms of consumer experience in that industry. So FMCG industry traditionally has been a very B2B business. And what I mean by that is, typically an FMCG will sell to a distributor who will sell to a kirana wala from where we will buy our products, or an FMCG will sell to an Amazon from where we will buy our products. So traditionally FMCGs have had really very little amount of consumer data, right? And all of that changed when a strange virus hit all of our planet, and suddenly, everyone became D2C overnight. Everyone wanted to service their consumers themselves to ensure that the products are available, they are accessible. Yeah. And FMCG is actually, most of the FMCG portfolio, or rather a large part of FMCG portfolio, also falls in the essential products category. So it was essential for the companies to pivot to do that. Now, as companies started pivoting to, servicing consumers directly, what FMCGs also realized that consumer preferences are rapidly changing. Yeah. And it gave an awareness that knowing your consumer on a one-on-one level, doing things like personalization, can greatly enhance not only the sales but also overall consumer understanding for an FMCG. So which means that FMCGs today now have a decent amount of personal data. This personal data could come from the FMCG websites that, consumers may have bought their products from. It could come from visiting brand.com websites where you go and see how to for a product, so how to use a product, how to get best results out of a product, what is a regime or a range of product that you need to use to get best results, and things like that. And what happens with that is that you need to now ensure security of that data, because if that data is lost or misused in any fashion, it can result in loss of reputation. And loss of and reputation is the biggest asset for any company, right? Of repute. So to ensure that we are able to protect the data at a company level, companies apply various kind of digital strategies, yeah, ranging from cookies and consent, which Sujay talked about. How do we collect cookie level data, all the data that we have, do we have consent for it, and how are we using that data? Yeah. One of the key concepts that we apply when it comes to digital is the concept of zero trust, or ZTNA. So that is a key concept that is being implemented in the FMCG industry worldwide, which is basically a set of technologies and functionalities which enable secure access to the applications and data. Yeah, because we heard data also is a driver of trust, like how Sujoy explained, right? There's also another concept that FMCGs use a lot, and Akhilesh alluded to it very nicely in his robber and mask story, which is anonymization, right? At the end of the day, for an FMCG, we want to understand consumer trends. We want to understand how a certain segment of consumers is behaving, what could be the reasons for that behavior, and hence what is the product innovation that we could do to make the life of the consumers easier. So anonymization is one tool to remove, or a process to remove, all the personal data, and just to capture the essence of the trends, which can be used for product innovation, product reformulation, and could be used for understanding the trends, what is tomorrow and what is the future. So that's what I'd like to leave you with. So back to you, Nidhi.
Thank you once again for your dedication to advancing our understanding of this critical aspect of the digital landscape by explaining, especially B2B, how it became B2C overnight. Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to call our next speaker, Ms. Ritu Mittal, Head of Marketing and Digital at Bayer Consumer Health Division in India, with over 17 years of experience. Gold medalist from Delhi College of Engineering and an MBA from IIM Bangalore. Recently, she joined the jury for the Outdoor Advertising Awards, highlighting her leadership and recognition in marketing and digital strategies. Ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very warm good evening to everyone. And huge thanks for this opportunity to engage with such esteemed panelists. It's been a wonderful evening listening to all of the stories on trust and your journeys. And huge thanks to Professor Tiwari for initiating this journey. I think this is a topic which is very critical in today's age to discuss, to understand, and I really want to congratulate you for taking this initiative to hold this panel today for the discussion. Uh, I think when I think about trust, um, the one image that comes in front of my eyes is when a parent holds a child and throws the child up in the air, and we say that this is trust because the child is smiling and the child trusts that the parent will catch the child back. uh, However, I think when the child is an infant, it is not trust, but it is more ignorance, that the child is not aware what will happen if I fall. However, and the child, as the child grows up and has experienced what falling means and what pain means. The same thing when applied to a toddler means trust. If the toddler is still smiling when the parent bounces the toddler up, and the child is in the air and ready to be caught back, smiling means that they trust the parents that I'm going to be caught back and they're not going to let me fall down. And why I narrated this story is because I think our consumers today are definitely not the infant, but the toddler who is not ignorant any longer. They have experienced, they have read, they understand what sharing my data may mean. If not anything else, they are definitely scared after reading multiple stories of fraud of larger scale, whether it is in India or beyond. There are multiple stories that they read here and there that we get to hear here and there about how data may be misused. So we are dealing with consumers who are to some extent worried, scared about how their data may be used. Now, if we look at the other end of it, which is businesses, brands, uh, some of it what Srimoy touched upon on why it has become so important for businesses and brands to gather data, to use data. Specifically, when we talk about the space of advertising, which whether FMCG or consumer health or across industries, when we look at advertising, more and more it is becoming about shopper targeting. How do I use programmatic to reach out to the right consumer at the right time with the relevant content? And if we want to achieve all of these rights, then we are talking about using consumer data. Now, why is it important even for the consumers that this personalization should happen, or this customization of content and messaging should happen? Because it makes the advertising more relevant to them versus an irritant which they want to skip all the time. So overall, it's for good. But how do we then bridge this gap between the trust with which consumers are willing to share this data and the companies are able to target them sharply for reaching them at the right time, right moment, in order to be relevant and not an irritant and build their business at the same time? I think this is where the authenticity in communication. We talked about consent. So simplicity of language that is used for consent, for example, starts becoming very important versus trying to use complicated language which a consumer cannot understand. The reachability, the consumer service becomes very important, wherein the power is given in the hands of the consumer to ask the question on how is my data going to be used, where is it going to be stored, how are you going to ensure the security of it. And by giving this power in the hands of the consumer, we can rebuild the trust which may be lost because of, not because of say our actions, but because of the wider actions that they hear and read about. Digital trust or trust overall is the most important equity metric for any brand across any sector. Because I'll give you a short story on this. So recently I went to a Chroma, and I had to buy something, and I made the payment. It was a big amount. Somebody in my family said that, "Are you sure that they will deliver?" I said, "Yeah, this is Tata. You don't need to worry about it." And that is what brand trust is about. It takes a very long time to build it. It takes consistent, not just communication, but consumer service, the reliability of products. And the interesting aspect about trust is that trust broken in one aspect influences trust in other aspects. So if I buy a product from a company and the product doesn't deliver on its promise, I will start doubting it even on their when they seek any data from me in an online platform. So trust is not like, you broke my trust on product, I will still trust you when I'm sharing data. uh, Trust is the most fragile but the most strong aspect that a brand could own. And hence it becomes very, very important for brand to be authentic, open, transparent in its communication, to be very responsive, to have a very strong consumer, to have a very strong customer service base, when consumers seek that anything with respect to their data, to share very openly what are their data policies and what are they going to do with that data when they don't need it any longer? How frequently is it updated? Those are questions which consumers are now asking, and we as brands and business need to become a lot more open to sharing this versus trying to hide it under a cover. I think that is very, very critical in the area of digital trust for brands and businesses today. So these are the few pointers that I had in my mind to share, but happy to hear more and hear some questions as well.
Exciting insight on the significance of digital trust and how you explained it with the child in air, waiting and ready to be caught back. That's trust and how a brand consistently builds trust in the consumer's mind. In the fast evolving digital landscape, your guidance on fostering trust through responsible technology use was invaluable, ma'am. Now I will call our next speaker, Mr. Sankalp Pandey, serves as the Chief Technology Officer at Binary Flux, leading the development of a next generation analytics and automation platform aimed at optimizing operational costs for the teams. With over 15 years of experience, Mr. Sankalp brings a wealth of expertise to his role, particularly in solution architecture. Mr. Sankalp, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, for introducing me. And I would like to extend my congratulations to IIM team and Professor Tiwari and Purnima ma'am to give me the stage to attend this event and understand and participate in the landscape which is evolving with time, and especially in the times of AI, where things are, the first evolution that happened was the internet, then now it's the AI, right? So how we participate as a team to foster more trust between consumers, organization, people, it becomes very important. Um, from I think uh, uh, panelists before me have talked broad lengths about how trust could be established, and we know now that what the definition we are talking about in terms of digital trust. I would like to specifically talk in terms of when we are building such products that typically deal with cybersecurity. How do we establish or what gaps that we see in terms of establishing a trust between organizations to the product and the end users, right? So I'll give few scenarios and also talk about it. Um, since you know that I'm working with a product that helps detect anomalies in the real time, and the core of our product is the AI. But whenever we take our product to customer, what is the first question? How much they can trust us, right? Trust in terms of what? We deal with data that is very private to organization user. The information that they share are typically the security events that we are getting into our system. And security information doesn't only have the PII, the personal information of the user, but also the infrastructure related components that are being shared as part of those security events. So it becomes important for an organization that since you are a security provider, but how much you yourself trust that how you'll be handling that data. So it becomes of paramount importance that we give them the confidence, or we give them the trust that they can run their security operations with our product without having in mind to deal with the data breaches or data be going out of the organization boundaries. So if we are working on such products, and if we are with the companies that are letting us put their products in their organization boundaries, becomes very important to have process as the digital trust, right? How you maintain GDPR, how you let them ensure that you have HIPAA compliance maintained within your application, how analysts are able to deal or see the data when they're triaging things, right? So there are a lot of different scenarios where you have to keep in mind uh, that while your company employees or analysts that are working on these security operations data set, they are not able to get to user personal information. They are not able to become insider threat themselves, taking that information outside the organization. So it becomes important to have that as a process, a business process, while getting these products out. I'll quickly take a scenario, a very different scenario from what we are talking about, but it also resembles to how we settle the trust between two entities. There was a recent attack that happened with one of the organizations where the impersonator, the caller, uh, gathered some information from the social media, from different other channels that he could about a person who was data admin in an organization. And he called IT help desk guy. He told them that, can you please switch off my multi-factor authentication, or you could switch off certain settings. So that led to a big data breach where this person was able to get into the system and encrypt the data that was there within the organization boundaries and then ask for some ransom, right? But what happened in this whole process? Was there a trust between the IT help desk guy and the entity who was calling, or the impersonator, right? How do you establish a trust within organization to supposed to be employee that is calling you or an impersonator? How do you establish that trust? So it becomes very important even for the organizations to establish trust with outside entities, or their employees, or their third party vendors when they are digitally interacting with each other. So that's the gap that I see right now, which is there in the industry. And these attacks are possible. And especially when you talk about AI, people are able to simulate these attacks. And how do you work with AI in these modern days? How do you deal, or how do you create a trust between two digital entities to make sure your process runs end to end well? So I would leave at this example, because we all have talked about digital trust a lot. But in terms of the how the products are developed, or how the organizations connect with each other, or the entities connect with each other, how they establish a trust between them. Thank you so much. Back to you, Nidhi.
Thank you so much for your time, expertise, and the engaging session. Now, I would like to ask few questions which participants have given it to me. The first question goes to Mr. Akhilesh Tuteja ji. Sir, may I ask?
Yes, please go ahead.
So, what are the biggest challenges for India in building a digital economy that is based on trust?
Okay, that's quite that's quite a loaded question. I wish I was in a position to actually give you an authentic answer, but first I would like to say that digital trust is not just a country-specific topic, because in today's world one doesn't really know where things are, and there's a sense of boundarylessness. So it's very hard to say that the businesses in India are more trustworthy than they are elsewhere because of the pervasive nature. So, for example, if you look at most of the businesses which are run in India, they might actually not be storing data in India, or vice versa. And Indians are serving businesses which are, from the other parts. I think I'd like to highlight some of these challenges as to why is it hard to build digital trust for any country in the first place, and then I'll say that how India might be having a slight advantage over the others. One of the biggest challenge in the concept of digital trust is human itself. Okay, because all of us have lived, and when I was hearing Ritu talked about the throwing a child in the air, that child is actually behaving in a particular manner with 50,000 years of history of human cognitive development. For 50,000 years, we as humans have evolved to say, if you throw something in the air, it'll come down, because we all understand the laws of gravity without Newton having told us those kind of things. But the change which is happening, where the world is moving from physical to digital, is very recent and very fast, and I think the human brain hasn't really conditioned to deal with it. So one of the big challenges. So, for example, if you have a cow on the road and the car is speeding up, the cow may or may not know what the speed of the car is and whether I should run, and it may possibly just stay there and suddenly it'll run. Whereas a human can actually cross the road knowing very well that what is my speed and what's the car speed, and I can. So we get conditioned. Unfortunately, we are not conditioned for digital ecosystem right now because a lot of changes are happening right now. How many of you actually would realize that the next generation will have even bigger challenge? Because when we see somebody either in real life or on a screen like this, we tend to believe that they're talking to that individual. But in today's world, the AI models have created deepfake, which means that you may believe that it's me who's talking, but actually it might not be me talking about it. It might be some fake creation or deepfake creation of all that which is happening. The second big challenge which is happening in the human world, and I'll just give you a funny story on that one, is there's a guy who's working for a very large MNC in India, and very stressful job. Maybe somebody like me, and maybe it's me. And he is suffering from a very terrible situation where every evening around 4 o'clock he starts to have a severe neck pain, dizziness, and headache. And he's consulting many doctors. The doctors can do various tests on him, and they finally come and say, everything is fine with you. You actually got no problem. And he lives with this pain for 4 or 5 years. And suddenly somebody says that, actually there's a new doctor in town and he's solved a lot of these cases. So why don't you go and meet him? And this person goes and meets this new doctor, supposedly the big expert on neck pain. And he goes to his doctor and doctor says, I'm sorry, friend, to tell you, you actually got a very rare disease which is found in 1 in a million, and you're one of those 1 in a million unfortunate people. And all you have is 6 months to live because you have this rare phenomena which I've seen many people live with, and you are going to die. Of course, the person is very heartbroken and he says, how could it happen to me? How can I be that unlucky 1 in a million? But such is life. We kind of reconcile and says, okay, now you've got only 6 months to live. First, I should quit my job because I want to experience the world. And this man was, he didn't have the the desire of luxury watches and all that, but he liked nice shirts. So he goes to the market and buys the best silk cloth which is available and takes it to the tailor. And he says that, can you stitch 6 white silk shirts for me? This is the best cloth, this is the best fabric I've got, and I want to wear 1 a month for the next 6 months I've got. And he buys that clothes, takes it to the tailor, and tailor says, great, I'll make the shirts for you. And as the tailor is taking the measurement, as you know, these tailors in India, how they take the measurement, they take the measurement and ask somebody to write, and he takes the measurement and says neck 15. And this guy says 14. He says, no, sir, I've measured your neck is 15. He says, what are you telling me? For the last 30 years, I've been wearing all the shirts and my neck is 14. And the tailor says, if you insist, I'll make shirt size 14. But if you wear a tie and wear it for a long period of time, you'll have neck pain, dizziness, and headache for the rest of your life. So the point I'm trying to make through this story is that, we all get conditioned to live in a particular world the way we are. I don't think that we are conditioned to live in a digital world right now, not on the side of the consumer, nor on the side of provider. So the people who are providing digital solutions are also trying to force fit the physical world trust solution on digital world. We are trying to say what worked in the physical world for me, I will try and replicate. And that is how we have got all of these authentications saying, if you got a thumb, I will authenticate through a thumb. If you got these things, and I think that is the big problem. So if India has to come back and become a big economic superpower using the power of digital trust, here are the following recommendations I have. First and foremost, I think we have to change the rules of the game. And I think the Digital Data Protection Act is one such example where we have actually changed the rules of the game. If you look at it, for the last 40 years, the data protection regime around the world has been based on the GDPR, or what is called the EU data protection regime. I'm super proud to be an Indian where the Indian government has actually created a completely new regime, which is on Digital Data Protection Act, which is not a copy of GDPR, which most of the countries around the world have done. So I think that's one great thing which I see where we're looking at appropriate ways to deal with it. Second is, I think we have to work a lot on creating awareness and education about why is it different and how it is different. Many of these businesses are trying to do that, but I don't think they're doing enough. And therefore, I think the huge need to educate for us to do this, I think. The third thing, and I think there's a question also in the chat, which I'll try and bring in, saying, can AI destroy us? And I think that's a big thing. By the way, if you're interested, I'll indulge you in a little bit of detail that all technologies can actually be used for good thing and bad thing. If I were to ask you, is gun a good thing or a bad thing? It's a bad thing if it's in the hand of a robber. If it's a good thing, if it's in the hand of a soldier protecting our country. So every technology can be good or bad depending upon who the user is and what the intended purpose is. So is AI. By the way, deepfake. Deepfake hasn't been created to cheat people on creating impersonation. Deepfake was created by the movie industry in 1970s to say that we cannot have Amitabh Bachchan stand up and dub here. We will create synthetic voice for Amitabh Bachchan. And the way the technology was used for good purposes to impersonate somebody because that person is not available and he or she should be doing better things is now being used for doing bad things. So I think it's equally important on part of the users to get awareness of saying, how some of these technology can be used for good. And then the last one I would say is that this is a world where we actually don't know all the answers. So our ability to continuously experiment, pivot, and change and start wearing the shirt size 15, even though we believe the shirt size is 14, which we lived through us for the last 30 years. Those would be my recommendation for India to become a superpower economically through digital trust.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure you all have enjoyed the speaker's session by the stories shared by Mr. Akhilesh Tuteja-ji. The speaker not only captivated the attention, but also provided valuable perspectives on the significance of trust in the digital realm. Now, I will have my another question, that is, how can we ensure that digital trust is accessible and inclusive for all? Panelists. Shall I repeat my question? How can we ensure that digital trust is accessible and inclusive for all?
Okay.
I think in the topic of accessibility and inclusive for all, and when you talk about inclusive of all, it goes into the realm of policy. Yeah. So it has to be more policy driven. And I strongly believe that, there's a lot of work happening around policy around digital. And if you look at some of the policies that we have around AI, and I have extensively looked at India's AI policy and compared it with what say Canada has or some of the developed countries have, I think a lot of good work is being done to make sure that at a country level we have best of understanding of what global standards are and contextualizing it to the Indian context. So in terms of accessibility, I think policy is where for all, I think policy will play a key role.
And also to add a little bit from
If I want to kind of take in this. Sorry, I think Shima, you took a right dimension. I think Ritu also mentioned about one thing which actually struck me the most compared to all that. Which she talked about responsiveness. Let me ask you a question. That what is the opposite of love? And I'm sure when I asked this question to my daughter, and she said hate.
yeah,
And I can tell you. Yeah, it's the biggest opposite of love is ignore, as Sujay was mentioning. Imagine if you send a message to somebody and that person doesn't do anything about it. How would you feel? I think you will feel ignored and hated. And that is what is also one of the big factors in dropping digital trust. If you had a complaint with a website and you wrote to them and it is nothing, they couldn't be worse off and creating a sense of lack of trust. And I think that is something which we, in the physical world, people accepted, saying, hey, I wrote a letter, maybe the letter didn't reach. Maybe, you're too busy. But right now, people don't expect. If you send a message, you expect to receive a response. And I think when you talk about inclusiveness, to me, inclusiveness is not just about including all type of people, all strata. I think the first principle of inclusiveness is to be responsive. And I think that to me is very important aspect of building digital trust. Sorry,
yeah.
Sujay.
No, yeah, great point, Akhilesh. I just want to quickly add, if you just look at history and see where, it has been inclusive, especially for India, uh, I think it's to keep it simple, right? See, we've got blockchain, didn't take off as much, metaverse, these technologies are still in play, right? But I think it's just super complicated. UPI came very simple, Google, very simple. So if we keep this simple, I think it will be also inclusive. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
point.
no, I think that's a great point. And I think we were talking about, just to build on this, we were talking about AI, we were talking about technology and how with irresponsible usage, of course, in the wrong hands, there is always a chance of misuse. But I think if we look at the positive side of technology with AI today and a lot of other technologies, it has become a lot easier for brands to make the content available in multiple languages, not just as text, but also as voice. So, but just by ensuring simplicity in content on how you share the data policies, the privacy policies, inclusivity to true inclusivity to me is really when a consumer who cannot probably read and understand English has an option to still read, understand the privacy policy in the language they prefer. Or maybe, I would want to really envision a world where we actually have a voice version which can be made available on demand. But by being responsive, by making the content available in a simple language, in simple voice if may be required, is how we can become more inclusive.
I think it's a great point, and I would like to add to it. I mean, since we are moving towards days where content is, quickly becoming accessible in terms of what you see as reels, videos, or a kind of animated way of saying things. So it becomes important again, how do we get to a point where these things are established or conveyed in the same fashion so that user easily understands this.
Now, the next question is, in the scenario of everything being accessible at the press of a button, how do we ensure the ethicality of the use of such technology? And where is the limit and boundary drawn to obviate misuse of such technology?
I think first it comes from the user education. I'm sorry if I'm cutting it, but then we can build on it. It comes from the user education, how they are able to access these information and what all they are able to access, right? It's very difficult right now for a normal user sitting somewhere who doesn't understand the technology and what all and where all this information will lend him to. So I think it starts with user education and then maybe
Yeah, and the gun analogy which Akhilesh gave. So, gun in the hands of soldier versus gun in the hands of a criminal. So, I think ethics.
Actually, if I could come in here, I'm a little bit concerned about this word ethics, okay? Because unlike law, which you can actually say that this is acceptable and this is not acceptable, the ethics tend to have varied and inconsistent meanings across different generation, geographical boundaries, societies, and many things like that. So if you see in certain cultures, it is okay to do certain thing, whereas in other cultures, it is not okay to do those things. So trying to create universal rules around ethics can be very challenging. For example, in certain types of markets, it is okay to potentially monitor certain type of things, whereas in other parts of the world, surveillance is not acceptable. So I think there's one big challenge which we have as we start to build new age machine learning systems, that we possibly will struggle to build ethics into the design of the system, and unfortunately we don't have good solutions around it. There are groups like MIT Model Machine and many others are trying to build some solutions around it. But I think from all that which you've discussed so far, this is the biggest problem which we have right now.
The next question from the participant is, what are some best practices for businesses to manage digital trust risks in the consumer context?
So secure all personally identifiable information. So anything which can personally identify you, example is your name, your phone number. It's also your full face. Yeah. So all of that needs to be secured. If you need to use, for example, any of the personally identifiable information, you need to anonymize it. So in case you need to use a picture of a consumer to see how your product efficacy is. So example, you took a picture of a consumer to see how the acne cream works on her face. You take her picture, but you anonymize it by blacking out the eyes, right? Then that data can be used to study further, the patterns, etc., and we could apply algorithms on it. So anonymize your data, secure all the PII information. So you encrypt wherever in your database there is a personally identifiable information. You encrypt it so that nobody can access it. The support people cannot read it, or anyone else who has access to the database for valid reasons cannot read it. And of course, um, you start with the principle of ZTNA, so zero trust. You verify, all the accesses which are coming to your application or your data. So these are kind of like the top three which came to my mind.
Yeah. And just to add, I know Srimoy, you're probably the champion of this topic, running your business, but also voice. I think as voice is picking up, and how many times have you or your friends told that I was speaking this and suddenly there's an ad on Insta, exactly, what we were talking at home. So it's kind of spooky, right? So I think consumer confidence also has to be built by using a lot of this voice data appropriately, besides all the other things that Srimoy spoke about.
I think if I have to just add on to these things, couple of things, even from my experience, it becomes important to have right audits on the information that is sitting with you. Second is, if this happens, if somehow you lack to protect your data, how do you respond to it, to the incidents, right? That adds to your trust in terms of how quick you are able to respond to such attacks or such threats where you lose out some personal information, and how do you recover it?
Yeah, I think just one build I would want to make here is that as marketers, sometimes we can tend to be very greedy about all the data that we want to collect. But it's a good idea to really ask the question on what do you need, and to achieve a balance between intrusion and personalization, because you really don't want to scare away your consumers. You want to reach them in a relevant way. So achieving that balance is important, and hence asking the question on need and relevance, on what do you really need and what do you really need to collect, becomes very important without being too greedy about trying to understand and know everything.
Question about the next question is about the dark web, where identity is sold for $5. So how do we avoid it if we have an identity-based cybersecurity risk?
If you ask me, it's very difficult to avoid that. But I mean, it's complete the number of platforms, number of apps being available to the user. And that's where it becomes very important for these apps or these products to help consumer understand where their information will land ultimately, or how that can be accessed by other providers or other products from your platform to the another platform, right? So if you give enough transparencies, people start understanding on what kind of data they share within the platform. It becomes important to help users understand, educate them on these things.
For us to completely eliminate the data getting exposed on dark web, and therefore the business to create other safeguards where the data in isolation which is available in public domain. So for example, in the past, if your credit card information was available on dark, you could be, but this time there is a two-factor authentication. So even if somebody has my credit card information, most as well, which makes the just the accessibility of credit card information. Similarly, any other kind of data which can be kept is relevant, and the combination of static and dynamic data will only.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. We cannot save every information going to the darknet, but yes, how that information could be used to infiltrate or impersonate becomes important. How we protect the other side of the day, where you protect yourself even if your information is exposed to it.
Yeah, and I just want to add that just like how Ritu mentioned, responsible businesses are asking what is the purpose of collecting this data. I think as individuals also we should ask ourselves what is the purpose of sharing this data. Yeah. And if you feel there is a purpose, you should share. Otherwise, you should refrain from sharing as much as possible.
Next question is, what are the some best practices for businesses to manage data privacy risks? What are some best practices for businesses to manage data privacy risks?
So, from a digital point of view, what businesses do is that we identify the vulnerabilities digitally. So, which are the applications which are exposed externally or which have consumer data which could be of interest to others? So, first you identify within a privacy framework that what are your vulnerabilities, and then you come up with a plan or action plan how to secure those vulnerabilities. That could be done internally. So typically it could be IT and legal working together to secure privacy, because like how Sankalp mentioned that in case of a breach there needs to be a protocol to be followed, and and in all of that anyway legal has to be enrolled in that. So or it could be that you the other approach could be that you identify the vulnerabilities or you identify the need for having a privacy policy, and you can always bring on any expert from a big four or any of the consulting groups to help create that privacy strategy.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, there's another question now. What are the roles of government, businesses, and individuals in building and maintaining digital trust? What are the roles of government, businesses, and individuals in building and maintaining digital trust?
I think in different parts we've touched upon these aspects. So I'll try to summarize maybe some of the things that we've spoken and the panelists have added. I think on businesses, we are saying that right from being clear, simple, and transparent in communication to building the right security systems for ensuring the right collection, usage, and maintenance of data to avoid any security breaches. Some of these are very critical steps to be implemented. For individuals, we talked about certain tips to ensure that share as much as needed, implement various security measures like two-factor authentications, etc. So even in case there is some data that goes out, you do have a second layer of security built in for your data and for your information systems. Um, and for government, I think what we've talked about is for government and related bodies implementing the policies as are required to ensure the responsible usage of data by businesses and individuals, so as to ensure that the gun is in the hands of a soldier and not in the hands of a robber. And if it is in the hands of a robber, what are the implications and how do we deal with it? And what are the guidelines, the laws to take care of such instances? Those policies and guidelines become very important.
Yeah, also, one quick build to what Ritu said. I think on the business side, we've seen of late there's been the attacks have just gone up manifold, right? I think it's also important how businesses react when a breach happens. We've dealt with clients who've gone through ransomware attacks. Some tend to just go quiet and continue to lose trust. I think you should be able to communicate and be open. Of course, there's problem, but communication, constant communication is very helpful if an unfortunate incident happens. I think that's another build that I would just want to add. But great points.
Thank you all. My next question is, in VUCA world, how do we see the trusted supply chains?
I think one point on supply chains and trust in supply chains is that we need to secure the points, especially those where financial information is held within a supply chain, right? So, for example, one place which quickly comes to my mind is in a supply chain. There are freight partners. So, there are partners who will come to your factory, right? They will dock their truck, they will fill the truck, and then take the stocks from the factory to a distribution center or to a big customer wherever however you have designed your supply chain to be. So at these points there needs to be information recorded that which was the freight supplier, what was the size of the truck, was it a 21-ton truck or was it full load, what is half load, and when did the truck leave and when did the truck reach, and all of this information result in payment to the freight partner, right? So meeting all of these requirements that you had laid out, the size of the truck, the duration of the travel, etc., will lead to payment. Yeah, so you need to secure all the information and the point at which you are releasing, or the instruction that is in the system to release the payment to this vendor. Yeah, so like that, wherever you have such transactions or data or input which is leading to you paying someone or someone paying you, yeah, that needs to be secured.
Blockchain, by the way, is another great tool. If there's a multi-party supply chain, we've done it for some clients. It's complicated, but it just helps build a lot of trust, because otherwise, there's a lot of wastage because of lack of trust within the whole network. So that's something people are, exploring. Of course, nowadays funding is less to secure, so all of these tech-enabled projects are on the back burner. But there was a time not too far in the past, people were exploring and implementing blockchains to solve trust problems within supply chain.
My next question is, and this is the last question for today's evening. Value creation through digital technologies will be exploited, but how to build trust? This is my last question.
Sima is laughing.
I I repeat, value creation through digital technologies will be exploited.
By
But-
every organization.
Actually, this is the first time we are doing this. It's called Holland.
Akhilesh, are you there?
Sujay, we would like to have your views.
Yeah, so what's the second part of the question? Value creation will be exploited?
By every organization.
By every organization. So how do we build the trust?
Okay, I'm still, absorbing the question and trying to see the connection on that. But I think value and trust are not two different things. I think, there are basic building blocks for value creation, and trust, I think, is one of them. I think that's why, someone just mentioned about businesses and brands, right? I think brands are brands because they have built trust over a long period of time. And therefore, I think they have, of course, done value creation. Businesses also do value creation, but if you build trust along with it, I think you become brand. So I don't know whether I give a Miss India type of answer, but I just felt like that trust and value creation are like kind of intertwined.
No, thanks, Kanapuri sir, for being so observant. The reason I was smiling is I think to the person who has asked this question, I think the entire panel discussion was about this topic. So I think this gives us a good opportunity to summarize. I think there were various examples throughout the panel, like Ritu mentioned about Tata, Akhilesh mentioned about Amazon. So it's all about how we can build trust with repeated experiences. Yeah, like the Uber example which was shared. So I think digital will continue to be there. Value creation through digital will continue to be exploited, like you said. And trust is all about ensuring that consumer experience is consistent time over time over time.
How about this? If we have this value creation, you want to grow exponentially, probably your trust dimension has to grow almost more than exponentially. This is my take on that.
Absolutely agree. To me, I think um, for a business to do value creation, uh, trust is paramount. And uh, I don't think a business in the long term can build sustained value creation
Yeah.
without building trust. So the two are so strongly interconnected that I can't think of the two separately. And I think the word exploited sort of troubles me a little bit in the question, but because I would not want to think of value creation by a business as exploitation, because that's the word that is sort of contradictory to trust in the question. I think not value creation.
No, I think Khanapuri is a great point. I think digital trust really has to increase exponentially, particularly for businesses where the product is a digital product or a service and not a physical product. I think that's a great point in that context.
I'll give a very classic example. I was there checking in a hotel, and the biggest problem for me was what ID document should be given there. They are not accepting my institute document. They are not accepting anything which has got photo. They only want to give. They only want me to give an Aadhaar card. And Aadhaar card has a big challenge for me because I would not like to be exposed myself to all the risks.
Absolutely.
So this is being issued by none other than the police department. Okay, so somewhere that entire process of trust building gets lost, even though you have got a very good, strong digital solution. And I'm giving them a masked Aadhaar card. They are saying, no, it is not acceptable. I want a original number. Right.
Yeah.
So somewhere these things need to be taken up. And that's why I said, na, value creation, how it is being looked at, and where we are losing out sometimes.
I think so. Can I come?
Yeah.
And sometimes during checkout, you will also see people typing in your entire credit card numbers, right? I don't know whether you've noticed that.
Yes.
They'll type in and then they'll say it's for our records.
Yeah.
Just-
When the Aadhaar card was issued, I think so they forgot this what is masking the remaining 12 digits. But now if you are updating your Aadhaar card, it will come only with masking. Only last four digits are seen. I think that they have taken care, I believe. Yeah. I recently updated and it's only 4 digits are visible, nothing else.
Yeah, yesterday only.
Yeah.
That's a great start.
They have taken care of it. They have taken care of it.
So good. I think it was a great panel discussion. A lot of insights. Thank you.
Though I said that was my last question, but I got a request and I would like to have one last question from the panel.
Please go
So
ahead.
that's now this is a finally last question. So how do organizations protect against internal threat actors, whether it's through gaining additional privileges to make their workflow easier or someone using it to exploit vulnerabilities? And how do we differentiate between these?
There are a lot of aspects to it. I'm specifically targeting the insider threat program. So I understand. First thing is how do you enable the right access controls for the applications? Um, and how the information between employees are shared. How do you monitor that? Let's say if I'm your friend, I'm trying to get one of the passwords of your application through chat. And if my chat intelligently is able to tell you that please don't share, this is against the company policies, and I'm able to protect that, that's my win. But depending on different aspects of how I'm sharing the information within the organization, how much access controlled my applications are, and how educated my organizational users are, it all sums up to give you a control over how information either at rest or transit remains in the system.
And imagine the risk, the multiplication of the risk with outsourcing partners in different, parts of the world. I
Yeah.
mean, that just so if you don't have, processes, policies, systems that protect that, I think this to me is the number one issue that, one has to deal with, right? So
Very
Yeah, so internally, most organizations use a single sign-on or SSO. So one single password which connects with all the applications that the employee has access to. There are periodic audits depending on the organization and depending on the application which are done to ensure that the accesses are reviewed at regular intervals. So some organizations, for example, may have policy that your SAP access rights need to be reviewed every 30 days. So and whenever you are giving any exceptional rights, there has to be a certain level of approval. Someone is reviewing what is the kind of right being given, why is it being given, and when was that right revoked. Yeah. We also, there are a lot of organizations which do like what Sujay said, assessment of which databases, which data, which applications are going to be used by outsourcing partners. And any and every organization will use a lot of outsourcing partners specifically for support. So then you need to have specific profiles for the outsourcing partners also, depending on their role as to what they can access, what they cannot access, and what they can access with permissions.
I think there are a lot of, I'm seeing a trend of applications that are coming in that are evaluating human risk, not specifically to the side where I'm accessing the security events only, but they are trying to get to a place where they could determine how trustworthy my employee is. So assigning a trust score instead of a risk score to the user and getting to an index which is called as human risk index. I mean, that's where the industry is slowly moving. The organizations are moving where they're able to establish that Sankalp is the right one, has the right score, right trust within our organization. So I see that movement happening into the industry right now.
Thank you everyone for joining us. I now invite Professor Yashashvi Mandal to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Nidhi. So, good evening, everyone. So, as we reach towards the end of the session, on behalf of IIM Mumbai, I take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to all of you for gracing our session today on digital trust, the key for business success in the technological era. It has been an enlightening session, and we are truly honored to have such a distinguished group of experts sharing their knowledge and insights. At the outset, first I'd like to thank our chairman, sir, Mr. Shashi Kiran Shetty, for his guidance and continuous support to IIM Mumbai. The Digital Trust team expresses heartfelt gratitude to our director, sir, Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, for providing his continued guidance and encouragement. So, we have witnessed a truly remarkable exchange of knowledge and perspectives on a topic that is increasingly relevant in our digital age. Hence, we would like to express our deepest appreciation to the esteemed panelists, Mr. Akhilesh Tuteja, Mr. Sujoy Sen, Ms. Shrimoy Ghosh Dostidar, Ms. Ritu Mittal, and Mr. Sankar Pandey. Your expertise and passion for the subject have not only added immense value to the session, but have also provided our audience with a deeper understanding of the complexities surrounding the digital trust. And each of you brought a unique perspective. So we are grateful for the wealth of knowledge you have shared today. These thought-provoking discussions explored the various facets of digital trust, covering topics such as data privacy, cybersecurity, the ethical implications of emerging technologies, and the insights shared were not only informative but also actionable, equipping us with the tools and knowledge to navigate the digital landscape with greater awareness and responsibility. Today's session was under the aegis of the Digital Trust Lab, and we would like to extend our sincere thanks to the alumni, especially the IM2 and IM3 batches, for sponsoring the Data Science and the Digital Trust Lab at IIM Mumbai. Dear alumni, your commitment to promoting the initiatives on the crucial topics such as the digital trust is invaluable, and we appreciate your collaboration. Next, to our audience, both near and far, thank you for your active participation. We hope that today's discussion has sparked further curiosity and reflection on the importance of building and maintaining trust in the digital age. And last but not the least, a big thank you to the entire faculty team of Digital Trust, Professor Purnima Sangle, Chair Digital Trust, Professor Sanjeev Verma, Professor Sumi Jha, Professor Ruchita Gupta, Professor Vijay Kumar Manupati, Professor Vartika Srivastava, Professor Amit Kumar Das, and Professor Vipan Kumar for their excellent management and planning of the event.
And Professor Yashashvi Mandal.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Then we specially thank our student team led by Damini, Priyanshu, Tulsi, Nidhi, Kuber, Anindya, Anagha, Debashish, Akash, Arnab, Kaushik, Shaivi, and the other students who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the smooth execution of the session. Your dedication and hard work have not gone unnoticed, and we are highly grateful for your efforts. I'd also like to thank the administration and the IT support of IIM Mumbai for the seamless functioning of the event. And please pardon me if I have missed out anyone. And in closing, let us carry forward the knowledge and insights gained today into our respective fields and communities. Once again, thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to welcoming you to the future events. So over to you, Nidhi.
Thank you, ma'am. I, on behalf of IIM Mumbai, extend sincere gratitude to Director IIM Mumbai, guest speakers, each participant, and everyone involved. Your contributions have made this a truly impactful experience. Thank you, Jai Hind. May I now request all the participants to switch on the camera for the group photograph.
All of you can come, please come.
उधर ही कर लो ना
उधर ही कर लो।
उधर आपकी लैपटॉप
अरिंदर, कर लिया।
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.